Ethan Ryder had spent months preparing for this moment, yet nothing could have truly readied him for the grandeur of Zithra's royal palace. The alien world was known across the galaxy for its breathtaking architecture towers that seemed to pierce the clouds, walls of iridescent metal that shimmered with the light of 3 suns, and gardens where flowers sang softly when the wind passed through them. But the palace itself was more than beautiful. It was intimidating. Every step echoed against polished floors that reflected both the sky and the polished armor of the royal guards. Ethan, a human ambassador from Earth, walked calmly through the grand hall, feeling the eyes of the alien court upon him. He had been warned that Zithrans were proud and often dismissive of other species. Humans were especially underestimated. They were considered young, fragile, and short-lived. Yet Ethan knew that appearances could be deceiving. The feast was to celebrate the signing of a new trade agreement. Tables carved from alien stone curved around a central platform where the royal family sat. At the center of it all was Lord Vaylor, the 40-year-old alien royal who had a reputation for sharp wit and even sharper insults. His skin glimmered in shades of deep blue and silver, his eyes bright with centuries of wisdom or perhaps arrogance. As Ethan approached the table, the murmuring of the alien nobles quieted. Some watched with curiosity, others with skepticism. Humans had rarely been invited to such ceremonies. Ethan bowed slightly, a gesture of respect he had practiced countless times. Lord Vaylor's gaze met his, and for a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. "Ah," Lord Vaylor said, his voice smooth yet cutting, "the human ambassador. It is brave of you to appear in our presence, knowing how short your life will be compared to ours." His words were polite to a point, but the underlying mockery was clear. "Do you truly believe your kind can keep up with civilizations that have mastered the galaxy?" For millennia, a ripple of laughter passed through the court. Some nobles smirked, expecting Ethan to shrink or react with anger. But Ethan did neither. He simply smiled faintly, keeping his posture straight, and said nothing. Instead, he turned slowly and walked away, leaving the room silent. The echo of his footsteps on the polished floor felt louder than Lord Vaylor's insult. Whispers filled the hall. Heap didn't answer. Why would a human act this way? Is he truly without fear? Ethan walked toward the large observation window overlooking the city. The 3 suns were setting, painting the sky in gold, violet, and crimson. It was breathtaking, and for a brief moment, Ethan allowed himself to admire the view. But he did not forget why he was here. The insult had been deliberate. Lord Vaylor had meant to provoke, to test, to remind all present of the supposed inferiority of humans. Yet, in walking away silently, Ethan had already begun to challenge that notion. The alien palace was a place of rules and rituals, and a public response, even a defensive one, was expected. By refusing to engage, Ethan had done something subtle but powerful. Humans were often judged by their reactions, but he had shown that restraint could be just as strong as words. As he turned back to the feast hall, he noticed small, curious glances from nobles who had been watching the exchange. Some looked intrigued, others skeptical, but Ethan's focus was not on their opinions. It was on the path ahead. Diplomacy was as much about observation as it was about conversation. Every expression, every gesture, every pause could reveal much about a culture. Lord Vaylor, however, was not accustomed to silence being a response to insult. His eyes narrowed slightly, and for the first time that evening, he felt a flicker of something unfamiliar, doubt. The human before him had not shown fear, anger, or embarrassment. He had simply walked away. In the centuries of his life, Lord Vaylor had rarely encountered such behavior. Why does he not react? Lord Vaylor muttered under his breath, his voice barely audible to the nearest attendants. Does he not understand the insult? Perhaps he does, replied an older noble, his voice careful. Or perhaps he understands it too well. Humans are unpredictable. The conversation caught the attention of other courtiers. The word unpredictable carried weight. In a society where rules and tradition guided every action, unpredictability could be dangerous or powerful. Meanwhile, Ethan had taken his place near the observation window, but he remained part of the gathering, his presence quietly commanding attention. He did not raise his voice or demand respect. Instead, he let his calmness speak for him. In a world where many relied on status, weapons, or age to assert authority, his dignity alone was a statement. Lord Valar leaned back slightly, considering the human. He had expected confrontation, a retort, perhaps even anger. Instead, he had received silence. The insult, meant to humiliate, had failed. And more than that, the human's quiet defiance had begun to stir curiosity among the nobles. Perhaps humans were not as weak as they seemed. The feast continued, filled with rich alien foods, glowing fruits, spiced meats, and beverages that changed color as they were poured. Conversation flowed in melodic alien tones, but Ethan listened more than he spoke. Every laugh, every smile, every subtle gesture added to the picture he was painting in his mind of this alien society. He noticed how power was displayed, how subtle alliances formed, and how Lord Valar's presence influenced every word spoken in the room. After a while, the ceremony's main event began, the exchange of gifts. Ethan had brought carefully chosen items from Earth, simple yet meaningful. There were handcrafted pieces of human art, small devices that demonstrated human ingenuity, and seeds from rare plants found on his home planet. As he presented each item, he observed the reactions of the aliens. Some were polite, some impressed, and some curious. But no matter their reaction, he remained calm and respectful. Finally, it was time for Lord Valar to respond. The alien royal took each gift, inspecting them carefully. When he reached a small device capable of producing light and sound, he paused. "Interesting," he said, his tone measured. "Your species finds ways to make even the simplest tools seem impressive. But tell me, human, do you rely on such devices because your kind lacks true endurance and strength?" Ethan smiled faintly, holding the device carefully. "We do not underestimate the value of intelligence, my lord," he replied softly. His voice was calm, steady, and entirely free of anger. "Strength comes in many forms. Sometimes it is measured in endurance, sometimes in courage, and sometimes in restraint." A quiet murmur ran through the room. The court was not accustomed to humans speaking in such a manner, with subtlety and confidence rather than fear or aggression. Lord Valar's eyes flickered with something akin to respect or perhaps confusion. "Perhaps," he said finally, placing the device down. "Perhaps you are. Different than I expected." Ethan did not respond. He had made his point. Words could be powerful, but sometimes silence spoke louder. The human had not shouted, argued, or demanded recognition. He had simply shown that dignity and calmness were forms of strength the aliens had not considered. As the ceremony drew to a close, Ethan left the table and walked toward the exit. Guards and attendants bowed as he passed, some whispering in alien tones about the strange, quiet courage of humans. Lord Valar watched him go, feeling a stirring in his centuries-old heart. For the first time, he wondered what a human could achieve if given the chance, not just in diplomacy, but in challenges the aliens considered impossible. Outside the palace, the three suns were almost fully set, casting a soft glow over the city. Ethan paused for a moment, letting the beauty of Zithra's sky wash over him. The insult earlier had not shaken him. Instead, it had reminded him why he was here. Humans were underestimated, yes, but that was a strength in itself. Others' underestimation allowed humans to act in ways aliens could not anticipate. He knew the path ahead would not be easy. Lord Valar would likely seek to challenge him further, testing humanity's limits. But Ethan was ready, calm, observant, and determined. He would prove that humans were not just fragile creatures meant to be looked down upon. They were resilient, intelligent, and capable of remarkable feats even in a world that doubted them. And so, with a quiet confidence that came from knowing his own worth, Ethan Ryder walked away from the insult, leaving the palace behind but not the impression he had made. The silence of one human had spoken volumes to an entire court. Ethan Ryder's walk through the palace gardens was calm, but his mind was alert. The insult from Lord Valar still lingered in the back of his thoughts, not as anger, but as a puzzle to understand. The alien court had underestimated humans, as they always did, and this could be turned into an advantage. Observation, patience, and quiet confidence were tools no alien could easily measure. The palace gardens of Zithra were unlike any Ethan had seen before. Plants of impossible colors stretched toward the skies, their leaves catching light from the 3 setting suns. Streams of clear, blue water flowed over stones that glimmered as if they had been polished by the stars themselves. Strange birds with transparent wings chirped softly, and Ethan felt a moment of calm wash over him. Yet, he knew this peace was temporary. The challenge from Lord Vaylor was already forming. It arrived sooner than he expected. As he walked, a royal attendant appeared, floating on a hovering platform. The attendant's silver robes shimmered, and their voice carried the smooth cadence of authority. "Ambassador Ryder," the attendant said, bowing slightly. "Lord Vaylor wishes to speak with you in the Hall of Trials. He has requested your presence to demonstrate the value of your species." Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly, not in fear, but in thoughtful curiosity. "The Hall of Trials?" he asked. "I was not aware such demonstrations were part of the ceremony." The attendant smiled faintly. "It is not common for humans, but his lordship is intrigued." Ethan paused a moment before replying. "Then I will attend. I believe every culture has lessons to offer if one observes carefully." His voice was calm, steady, carrying no hint of hesitation. The journey to the Hall of Trials was long, passing through corridors lined with murals depicting Zithra's history. Scenes of great battles, incredible inventions, and legendary leaders filled every inch of the walls. Ethan noted that most images portrayed aliens displaying strength, speed, or intelligence, but none showed restraint, patience, or quiet cunning. Perhaps this was a weakness he could exploit. Finally, they arrived at a massive double door made of a metal that seemed both solid and liquid at the same time. The attendant waved a hand, and the doors opened silently, revealing a large chamber filled with structures, obstacles, and glowing panels. The air shimmered with energy, and Ethan could sense that this place was designed to test more than just physical skill. Lord Vaylor stood at the far end, his tall frame radiating authority. "Human," he said, his voice carrying across the chamber, "you have walked away from my insult. That is unexpected, but words alone do not impress us. You must now prove your species' worth." Ethan inclined his head slightly. "I understand, my lord. I will do my best to demonstrate humanity's capabilities." Lord Vaylor's eyes narrowed in a way that suggested both challenge and curiosity. "The trial of the ancients is not easy. It is designed to test your strength, your intelligence, your strategy, and your spirit. Fail, and you will leave this hall with only lessons learned. Succeed, and perhaps even we may reconsider our opinion of your kind." Ethan's heart remained steady. He had faced difficult situations on Earth, diplomatic crises, dangerous negotiations, and physical challenges, but nothing prepared him for this. Yet he trusted his own abilities. Humans were underestimated too often. It was time to show that courage, ingenuity, and observation could rival even the greatest alien skill. The trial began with a physical challenge. Large floating platforms hovered over a glowing pit, shifting slowly in unpredictable patterns. Ethan's task was to cross the platforms to reach the first checkpoint. Other aliens approached confidently, leaping with ease and strength honed over centuries. Ethan studied the movement carefully, noticing that the platforms responded to weight differently depending on speed and pressure. He did not rush. Instead, he observed, timed his steps, and moved with deliberate care. When he jumped, he landed with balance, barely causing the platform to tilt. Several nobles whispered, surprised by the human's poise. Ethan reached the first checkpoint without injury, earning a silent nod from one of the observing judges. Next came a puzzle challenge. Glowing panels displayed a complex sequence of symbols that needed to be activated in the correct order. Aliens often relied on memory, tradition, or brute computational power. Ethan, however, applied logic and pattern recognition, finding the connections that others overlooked. Slowly but surely, he activated all panels in the correct sequence. A quiet hum filled the chamber, signaling success. Lord Vaylor's gaze sharpened. "Interesting," he murmured. "Your species relies on ingenuity rather than raw ability. Perhaps that is but strength. Ethan moved on to the third stage, a test of leadership. Groups of alien participants had to navigate a maze filled with shifting walls, traps, and puzzles. As the only human, Ethan was paired with 3 aliens who were skeptical of his abilities. They doubted that a fragile human could guide them through the challenges. Ethan spoke calmly. Assessing their strengths, he divided tasks according to skill, communicated clearly, and encouraged his teammates rather than commanding. Slowly, the group began to trust him. They avoided traps, solved puzzles, and moved efficiently through the maze. By the end, the aliens were looking at him not with suspicion, but with respect. Lord Vaylor's expression remained unreadable. Yet Ethan could sense subtle tension. The human had done more than survive the challenges. He had shown a method of problem-solving that the aliens did not fully understand. Strength, agility, and intelligence were not the only measures of worth. Humans had something else: adaptability, teamwork, and patience. Finally, the last segment of the trial involved a simulation of a crisis situation. A virtual environment projected a series of disasters, falling structures, chemical hazards, and environmental shifts. Participants were expected to make decisions that would save themselves and as many others as possible. While some aliens acted impulsively, seeking to control everything, Ethan remained calm. He observed patterns, prioritized tasks, and led his small group to safety. Along the way, he made calculated risks that others would not have considered, demonstrating courage under pressure. By the end, the simulation recognized the outcomes as optimal. Though Ethan had done so without pride or showmanship, the chamber fell silent. Judges, spectators, and participants watched as Ethan's calm approach and clever thinking had surpassed expectations. Aliens whispered among themselves, realizing that humans were not as weak as they had assumed. A quiet respect began to spread through the room, subtle but undeniable. Lord Vaylor stepped forward, his usual haughty demeanor tempered with something new. "You have performed well, human," he said slowly, "not through brute force, nor through superior computation, but through patience, strategy, and calm reasoning. These are qualities unexpected from your kind." Ethan inclined his head politely. "Thank you, my lord. I have observed your people as carefully as you have observed me. Every species has its strengths. Humans may be short-lived, but we do not underestimate the value of thought, courage, or careful planning." A murmur of agreement ran through the observers. Even the most skeptical nobles could not deny the human's performance. Lord Vaylor's eyes flickered with something between curiosity and respect. Perhaps humans were worth more consideration than he had ever imagined. Ethan was not yet finished, however. The final test was still ahead, one that would examine character, not skill. Lord Vaylor had designed this trial to reveal the soul of the participant. The first stages had demonstrated humanity's cleverness and resilience, but now it was time to see whether humans could act with integrity and selflessness under pressure. The attendant approached again, floating silently. "Ambassador Ryder, the last stage will begin shortly. Your performance has been noted. Proceed when you are ready." Ethan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of expectation but also the quiet thrill of opportunity. This was a chance to prove more than physical skill or intelligence. It was a chance to show the true strength of humanity, courage, moral judgment, and the ability to act rightly even when others doubted. As he stepped forward toward the final challenge, Ethan thought back to Lord Vaylor's words from earlier. "Do you truly believe your kind can keep up with civilizations that have mastered the galaxy for millennia?" Ethan's answer was simple, yet powerful. "We do not merely keep up. We endure, we learn, and we act with purpose." And with that thought, he moved into the final stage of the trial, ready to demonstrate the true value of humans in a universe that had long underestimated them. The Hall of Trials hummed with an energy that was almost tangible. Light shimmered across the polished floors, reflecting the 3 suns that still lingered faintly above the palace towers. Ethan Ryder stood at the entrance, taking in the full scope of the challenge before him. This was the trial of the ancients, a test that had shaped the leaders of Zithra for centuries. It was a trial designed not only to measure strength and intelligence, but also courage, adaptability, and wisdom, Lord Vaylor watched from his elevated platform, his eyes narrowing with interest. The human had already surprised the court by walking away from an insult without anger and excelling in the preliminary challenges. Now it was time to see if Ethan could handle what the ancients had truly devised. The trial began with the labyrinth of mirrors, a vast maze where every wall reflected not just images, but illusions designed to mislead participants. Ethan stepped inside carefully, observing each reflection. The other alien contestants moved quickly, relying on speed and instinct. But many found themselves walking in circles, trapped by illusions of walls that did not exist. Ethan slowed his pace. He studied the reflections, noting subtle differences between real walls and mirrored illusions. Step by step, he advanced, relying on observation and logic rather than haste. With patience, he moved through the labyrinth while many of the aliens struggled, growing frustrated with the deceptive mirrors. By the time he reached the exit, a few of the nobles whispered in amazement. Humans, it seemed, could navigate even the most deceptive spaces with careful thought rather than brute force. Next came the challenge of strength, though not in the way Ethan had expected. Massive stone pillars floated in midair, each shifting slowly. Participants had to climb and move across them to reach the next checkpoint. Alien contestants leaped effortlessly, their centuries of training giving them agility and power. Ethan, smaller and less physically capable, approached the task differently. He studied the movement of the pillars, noting the points of balance and the rhythm of their shifts. Instead of jumping recklessly, he timed each step, using his smaller size to his advantage. He moved silently, almost like a shadow, and reached the next platform safely. A murmur of surprise spread among the observers. The human had survived a test designed for the strongest aliens not through raw power, but through clever timing and precise observation. The third stage tested strategic thinking. A holographic battlefield projected a series of complex scenarios, simulating both conflict and cooperation. Participants were expected to make decisions that would protect their allies, while achieving objectives. Some aliens approached this challenge with arrogance, assuming their superior intelligence guaranteed success. Many failed, making errors that cost them time or advantage. Ethan, however, paused and analyzed the patterns. He noticed subtle tendencies in the simulation, such as predictable reactions from certain holographic opponents, and the timing of environmental hazards. Using logic and careful planning, he navigated the battlefield efficiently, protecting the simulated allies while achieving objectives faster than most contestants. By the end of this stage, whispers of admiration began to circulate in the audience. The human's ability to think clearly under pressure had exceeded expectations. Afterward, the trial moved to the challenge of collaboration. Groups of participants were tasked with constructing a structure, using alien materials, levitating metal beams, glowing energy rods, and flexible crystal panels. Each team required communication, coordination, and trust. Ethan was paired with 3 alien contestants who initially doubted his abilities. Ethan began by listening. He observed each alien's strengths and weaknesses and then suggested a plan that allowed everyone to contribute effectively. He did not command, he guided. Slowly, the group began to cooperate, forming a structure that was stable and elegant. Other teams, relying on force or arrogance, struggled, their constructions collapsing repeatedly. By the end of the stage, Ethan's team had not only completed the task, but they had done so with efficiency and grace. The human had led without asserting dominance, and the results spoke louder than words. Lord Vaylor's gaze darkened slightly, a mix of frustration and intrigue. The human was excelling in ways he had not anticipated. It was not just intelligence or strength that Ethan displayed, but qualities the aliens had long undervalued: patience, adaptability, and emotional awareness. Finally, the trial moved to the test of courage. Participants entered a chamber filled with unpredictable obstacles, floating spikes, shifting platforms, and sudden energy blasts. Many aliens rushed forward with confidence, but confidence alone could not protect them from mistakes. Some fell, while others froze, unsure how to proceed. Ethan approached the test calmly. He moved deliberately, observing patterns and timing his movements carefully. When obstacles shifted unexpectedly, he adapted immediately, avoiding danger without hesitation. The chamber itself seemed designed to provoke fear, yet Ethan's focus never wavered. He advanced steadily, step by step, proving that courage was not about fearlessness, but about control, focus, and resilience in the face of danger. Midway through the chamber, Ethan encountered an unexpected challenge, a bridge that appeared solid, but could only support weight for a limited time. One of the alien contestants hesitated, unsure how to cross. Without thinking, Ethan offered a hand. "Follow me," he said calmly, guiding them across. Together, they reached the other side safely. Observers were stunned. Not only had the human passed a physical and mental test, but he had also demonstrated leadership and selflessness, qualities rarely emphasized in Zithran trials. As Ethan exited the chamber, Lord Vaylor stepped forward. The alien royal's expression was unreadable, yet his tone carried both acknowledgement and challenge. "You have performed admirably, human," he said. "Your species relies on ingenuity, patience, and adaptability rather than raw power. I admit, this is unexpected." Ethan inclined his head respectfully. "Thank you, my lord. I have observed your people as carefully as you have observed me. Every society has strengths and weaknesses. Humans have learned to rely on resilience, collaboration, and strategic thinking, precisely because we cannot rely on sheer power alone." A hush fell over the chamber. Judges, participants, and spectators alike considered the humans' words and actions. For centuries, aliens had assumed humans were weak, short-lived, and incapable of significant achievements. Yet Ethan had challenged every expectation, demonstrating that strength took many forms, some subtle, some quiet, but no less effective. Lord Vaylor's eyes flickered with something almost like respect. The insult he had delivered days ago seemed distant now, overshadowed by the undeniable performance of the human before him. Ethan had not only survived the trial of the ancients, he had excelled, often in ways the aliens had never imagined. The trial was not yet over, however. A final segment remained, the test of character. Unlike the previous challenges, this stage would examine the essence of the participant, their morals, decisions, and integrity. It would reveal not just how clever or strong one was, but how one acted when faced with difficult ethical choices. Ethan prepared himself. He had faced difficult decisions on Earth, and he knew that actions often spoke louder than words. This final test would show the Cortan Lord Vaylor that humanity's value was not measured only by intelligence or strength, but by the courage to act rightly. Even when others doubted or feared, the chamber shifted, and a new environment appeared. A holographic city teetered on the edge of destruction. Floods, fires, and collapsing structures threatened the inhabitants, who were holographic representations of both humans and aliens. Participants were tasked with saving as many as possible while also completing objectives that tested judgment, priorities, and fairness. Ethan moved with calm focus. He prioritized those in the most immediate danger, coordinated with others when necessary, and made difficult choices without hesitation. He risked his own safety to guide simulated citizens to safety, understanding that leadership was about sacrifice and judgment, not glory. By the end of the test, the system's assessment confirmed what observers had already noticed. Ethan's approach was optimal. Not only had he demonstrated skill, intelligence, and courage, but he had also displayed moral clarity and empathy, the qualities that define true leadership. The Hall of Trials fell silent. Even Lord Vaylor's usual composure seemed shaken. The human before him had surpassed expectations in every measurable way, proving that intelligence, courage, and morality could rival even centuries of alien experience. Lord Vaylor's voice finally broke the silence. "Human, you have shown more than skill. You have shown wisdom, courage, and integrity. Your species is more capable than I had allowed myself to believe." Ethan bowed slightly. "Thank you, my lord. I only acted as I believed best. Humanity has learned that strength is not measured only in power or longevity, but in resilience, empathy, and clear thought. A murmur of agreement rippled through the observers. For the first time, many of them saw humans not as fragile outsiders, but as beings worthy of respect. Ethan had done more than survive the trial of the ancients. He had redefined what the aliens believed possible. Lord Vale regarded him quietly, his earlier arrogance softened by a recognition of truth. The insult he had paid. The chamber fell silent as the lights dimmed and a soft, shimmering mist spread across the floor. Ethan Ryder took a careful step forward, his senses alert to every subtle shift in the environment. He had passed the physical, strategic, and collaborative challenges of the trial of the ancients. But now the trial shifted from skill to character. The test of character was said to reveal the true nature of a participant, how they would act under pressure, when faced with choices that affected not only themselves but others. Lord Vale watched from his elevated platform, arms crossed and expression inscrutable. He had already seen humans demonstrate cleverness, adaptability, and courage, but he remained skeptical of whether they possessed the moral strength that centuries-old aliens valued so highly. The room hummed with tension, the audience waiting to see if Ethan would rise or falter. The first scenario appeared like a holographic city on the edge of collapse. Fires blazed in buildings, and holographic citizens, some human, some alien, ran in panic. Bridges swayed dangerously over glowing molten pits, and walls cracked under pressure. A voice, calm and neutral, echoed through the chamber. Participants must make decisions that will save the most lives, while achieving the objectives. Failure to act wisely may result in loss of life. Ethan took a deep breath. This was a test not of strength or intelligence alone, but of judgment, compassion, and leadership. He moved swiftly, scanning the situation. His first priority was those in immediate danger. A group of citizens, frozen in fear on a collapsing bridge, caught his attention. With a quick gesture, he guided them across a safe path, assessing each step carefully to ensure they did not fall. While some alien contestants rushed ahead recklessly, Ethan observed patterns. He noted which areas were most dangerous, which bridges could hold weight, and which exits were safe. Step by step, he led citizens to safety, using patience and foresight rather than speed alone. A few aliens in the chamber whispered, and surprised humans were often seen as impulsive or weak. Yet here was one demonstrating foresight and calm under pressure. The next stage of the test presented a moral dilemma. A collapsing building threatened to groups of citizens. One group was larger, but further away, while a smaller group was closer but in immediate peril. Participants had to choose whom to save first, knowing that both could not be fully protected. Ethan paused. His mind worked quickly, weighing risk, probability, and the immediate needs of each group. He chose to save the closer group first, moving them to safety with care. Once they were secure, he returned to the larger group, guiding them as efficiently as possible. Though some were injured in the process, all survived. The decision had been difficult, but it demonstrated that humans could act with both moral clarity and practical intelligence under impossible conditions. Lord Valer's eyes narrowed slightly. He had expected rash choices or even hesitation. Yet Ethan's decisions were deliberate, thoughtful, and most importantly selfless. He was not acting for glory or recognition. He was acting because it was the right thing to do. The final part of the test of character was the most challenging. A simulation designed to tempt participants into prioritizing personal gain over ethical action. A holographic chamber appeared, filled with treasures, advanced alien technology, and artifacts of immense value. The instructions were simple: retrieve the items to gain high scores. Participants could take whatever they wished, and success was measured by how much they acquired. Many aliens immediately began gathering items, confident that their skill and strength would earn them the highest scores. Ethan, however, paused. He studied the items, recognizing that some of them were linked to the well-being of others in the simulation. Taking them might offer personal advantage, but it could endanger holographic citizens still in the city outside. Ethan made his choice. He bypassed the treasures, instead focusing on securing the remaining citizens and ensuring their safety. When obstacles appeared to energy fields and collapsing platforms, he guided those in danger with calm precision. His focus was not on reward, but on responsibility. By the end of the simulation, the system's results showed that Ethan had acted with remarkable integrity, prioritizing others' well-being over personal gain. A murmur ran through the hall. Some nobles, initially skeptical of humans, exchanged glances of astonishment. For centuries, Zithrans had valued cleverness, skill, and strength, but they had rarely witnessed such a balance of intelligence and moral judgment. Ethan's performance challenged everything they had assumed about human nature. Lord Vaylor descended from his platform. Moving closer to Ethan, the alien royal's expression was unreadable, but the subtle shift in his posture revealed a flicker of respect. "Human," he said slowly, "you have demonstrated not only intelligence and courage, but judgment, selflessness, and moral clarity. Your species is more capable than I imagined. You have acted in ways that even centuries of experience might not teach an alien." Ethan inclined his head respectfully. "Thank you, my lord. I have learned that true strength is measured not by how much one can take or dominate, but by how wisely and compassionately one acts. Humanity has survived and thrived not by brute force, but by cooperation, courage, and careful choice." The chamber's audience, the judges, nobles, and participants watched in silence. Even those who had doubted humans could not deny what they had witnessed. The test of character had revealed the essence of a human, capable of bravery, intelligence, and above all, ethical action. Ethan had faced danger and temptation, yet he remained consistent in his choices, proving that character could surpass even the most carefully honed skill or strength. Lord Vaylor stepped even closer. Studying Ethan, "You have turned what was meant to be a mere demonstration into a lesson for us all," he said. "In centuries, I have rarely seen a being act with such balance of thought, courage, and conscience. You have earned respect." For a moment, silence filled the chamber. The weight of centuries of expectation hung in the air. Aliens who had once scoffed at humans were now looking at Ethan with a new understanding. Strength was not only physical or intellectual. It could also be quiet, patient, and moral. Humans had a way of turning the underestimated into the extraordinary. Ethan felt a small surge of satisfaction, not from recognition or praise, but from the quiet knowledge that he had remained true to himself and to humanity. The trial of the ancients was not just about proving worth. It was about showing the value of choices, integrity, and courage. And he had done that in full measure. Lord Vaylor's voice broke the silence once more. "Human, I must admit, your response to the trials has changed my perspective. I no longer see your species as fragile or insignificant. You possess qualities that even centuries of alien experience cannot always teach. Resilience, moral clarity, courage, and intelligence, these are strengths not to be underestimated." Ethan bowed slightly. "It is an honor to be recognized, my lord. But I acted not for praise, but because it was the right choice. Humanity survives and thrives by making difficult decisions with care and courage." A few nobles whispered among themselves. Some nodded subtly, while others exchanged looks of astonishment. The test of character had succeeded not only in revealing Ethan's qualities, but also in challenging the assumptions of an entire court. For the first time, many began to see humans not as outsiders or inferiors, but as beings with unique strengths worthy of consideration and respect. Lord Vaylor's posture shifted slightly, a rare hint of humility showing through. "I see now that our underestimation of humans was premature," he admitted quietly. "Your species possesses a balance that many of us might never fully understand. You have shown that true strength is measured not only in power or longevity, but in how one acts under pressure and in the service of others." Ethan nodded, his calm expression unchanged. "I hope that through these trials, humans and Zithrans alike can see the value of understanding, cooperation, and respect. Every species has lessons to teach if one observes carefully." The audience erupted into polite applause, tempered by amazement. The trial of the ancients had tested centuries-old assumptions and revealed something extraordinary. A human could face challenges designed for the most experienced aliens and emerge not only unbroken, but respected for the very qualities that made humans unique. Lord Vaylor regarded Ethan one final time, a small, almost imperceptible smile appearing on his lips. The insult he had offered days ago seemed meaningless now. In its place was acknowledgment, quiet, earned, and sincere. The human had walked away from mockery, endured rigorous trials, and emerged with dignity, intelligence, and character intact. As the chamber's lights brightened once more, signaling the end of the test of character, Ethan took a deep breath. The challenge had been immense, testing every facet of ability, intellect, and morality. Yet he had succeeded, not by proving humans were better than aliens, but by showing that humans possessed qualities that could stand alongside the finest of any species. The next stage would be recognition and the beginning of real change. But for now, Ethan allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. He had faced the ultimate test, and the human spirit had shone brightly, even in the halls of alien power. The grand chamber of the Hall of Trials was filled with a quiet energy, one that spoke of history, challenge, and revelation. Ethan Ryder stood at the center, his posture calm and composed. Yet his mind raced with thoughts of the trials he had endured. He had navigated the labyrinth of mirrors, climbed shifting pillars, led his team through challenges, and faced the test of character with unwavering integrity. Now, the moment of recognition had arrived. Lord Vaylor descended from his elevated platform, moving slowly toward Ethan. The alien royal, once proud and quick to insult, now carried a presence tempered by reflection and respect. The court had watched in silence, their eyes focused on the human who had defied expectations and altered perceptions. For centuries, humans had been considered fragile, short-lived, and weak, but Ethan had proven otherwise. "You have completed the trial of the ancients." "Human," Lord Vaylor said, his deep voice resonating throughout the chamber. "Not merely with skill, strength, or intelligence, but with qualities that are rare even among the oldest of my people: patience, courage, moral clarity, and empathy. You have earned respect." Ethan inclined his head, a gesture of quiet gratitude. "Thank you, my lord. I did not act for praise or recognition, but to honor the values I believe are essential. Humanity survives and thrives by making difficult choices with care, courage, and integrity." A murmur of astonishment passed through the audience. Some aliens nodded subtly, while others whispered in amazement. For the first time, many began to reconsider the long-held assumptions about humans. Strength was not always measured by physical prowess or centuries of experience. It could also be measured by patience, thoughtfulness, and character. Lord Vaylor continued, stepping closer. His eyes, sharp and calculating for centuries, now held a new warmth, a flicker of understanding. "I must admit, human, that I underestimated your kind. Your species possesses qualities that even centuries of training cannot fully cultivate in an alien. Resilience, ingenuity, and morality, these are strengths we can learn from. If we are wise enough to observe." Ethan listened carefully. He had come to Zithra not to prove humanity's dominance, but to demonstrate the value of character, intelligence, and courage. Yet hearing these words from Lord Vaylor was significant. Respect had been earned through action, not demanded through words. The ceremony continued as the court prepared to honor the human ambassador. A golden medallion, encrusted with iridescent crystals from Zithra, was presented to Ethan. It was a symbol of acknowledgement, not only for surviving the trials, but for representing humanity in the highest regard. When he accepted it, Ethan did so with humility, holding the medallion with both hands and bowing respectfully. "Take this not as a sign of superiority," Lord Vaylor said, "but as a recognition that your species possesses qualities worthy of consideration. Humans are no longer to be underestimated, ignored, or mocked. Your actions have inspired even the most skeptical among us." As the applause of the court filled the chamber, Ethan felt a quiet satisfaction. The human spirit had shone brightly, not through aggression or boastfulness, but through calm observation, careful reasoning, and ethical action. It was a lesson not just for the aliens, but for all who had witnessed it. After the formal recognition, Lord Vaylor approached Ethan privately, away from the gaze of the court. His expression was serious, yet softened by contemplation. "Human," he said, "I offered an insult when first we met. believing it would reveal weakness or fear. Instead, it revealed something far greater: dignity, courage, and wisdom. I underestimated you, and for that, I apologize, not out loud, for that is not my way. But in acknowledgement of truth, Ethan nodded. Thank you, my lord. There is no need for apologies. Every culture tests and judges in its own way. I only hope that we can learn from each other, and that our actions reflect understanding rather than arrogance. A subtle smile crossed Lord Valar's face. Perhaps this is the beginning of a new understanding between humans and Zithrans. You have shown that respect is earned not through dominance, but through action and character. There is much your people can teach, and much we may yet learn. Outside the Hall of Trials, the city of Zithra gleamed under the light of the three suns. The towers and gardens reflected an almost magical brilliance. Yet Ethan's mind was focused on the greater horizon, the potential for collaboration and mutual respect between humans and aliens. His journey had begun with an insult, but it had evolved into an opportunity to demonstrate the value of humanity in ways the aliens could not ignore. As Ethan walked through the palace gardens, some of the younger nobles approached him quietly. They asked questions about human culture, technology, and philosophy, their curiosity genuine. Others offered subtle nods of respect, acknowledging that this human ambassador had achieved what few outsiders ever could, changing the perception of an entire society through calm dignity and intelligent action. Ethan took the time to answer thoughtfully, explaining how humans value cooperation, innovation, and moral responsibility. He spoke of the importance of making choices with care, of learning from mistakes, and of working together to overcome challenges. The aliens listened attentively, many visibly impressed by the clarity and sincerity of his words. Lord Valar watched from a distance, noting how Ethan engaged others without arrogance or condescension. Perhaps this human is unlike any we have seen before, he murmured to himself. The strength of character displayed is remarkable. In the days that followed, Ethan's influence spread beyond the palace. Reports of his actions during the trial of the ancients circulated throughout Zithra and to neighboring worlds. Humans, once considered fragile and weak, began to earn new respect. Scientists, diplomats, and explorers alike took note of the ambassador's calm courage and strategic intelligence. It was not the power of technology or numbers that earned admiration. It was the demonstration of resilience, morality, and intellect in the face of challenge. Ethan continued his diplomatic work, meeting with leaders, negotiating treaties, and sharing knowledge. But even in the midst of these duties, he remained mindful of the lessons he had demonstrated: patience, careful observation, courage under pressure, and ethical action. He had proven that humans could be underestimated at their peril. Yet he also hoped that respect and understanding could replace conflict and arrogance. One evening, as the three suns dipped below the horizon, Ethan found himself back in the palace gardens. The air was cool, filled with the scent of alien flowers and the soft hum of energy flowing through the city. Lord Valar approached, walking with a measured grace. You have changed the perspective of many. Human, Lord Valar said, but more importantly, you have shown that humans can inspire change through example, rather than force. That is a lesson even centuries of experience cannot always teach. Ethan smiled faintly. I hope that it encourages understanding, my lord. Every species has value, and every being has lessons to teach. Respect and cooperation can achieve far more than arrogance or dominance. Lord Valar nodded, a quiet acknowledgement passing between them. The earlier insult seemed a distant memory, overshadowed by what had been accomplished. In its place was recognition, mutual understanding, and the potential for a future where humans were seen not as outsiders, but as equals, resilient, intelligent, and capable of remarkable achievement. As Ethan left the gardens and returned to his quarters, he reflected on the journey that had begun with a simple insult. What could have sparked anger or retaliation instead became an opportunity to demonstrate the depth of human strength. He had walked away once, silently, allowing actions to speak louder than words. And in doing so, he had achieved something far greater than victory in a trial. He had earned respect. challenged assumptions, and inspired change, the three suns had set, leaving the city bathed in the soft glow of twilight. The alien towers and gardens sparkled like stars fallen to the ground. Yet the true light of the evening, Ethan knew, was the quiet recognition of human capability and dignity. The ripple of change he had started would continue, shaping perceptions and opening doors for understanding between humans and Zithrans for generations to come. Lord Vaylor stood at the edge of the gardens, watching the human ambassador with thoughtful eyes. "Perhaps we have underestimated humans for too long," he murmured. "Perhaps it is time to see them not as fragile creatures, but as beings capable of remarkable courage, wisdom, and moral strength." Ethan did not hear the words, but he felt the shift in attitude, the subtle acknowledgement that humans had earned a place at the table of respect. He had begun with silence, faced challenges with intelligence and courage, and demonstrated character when it mattered most. The insult that had once stung now seemed insignificant, replaced by the knowledge that humanity's true power lay not in words or weapons, but in resilience, integrity, and the ability to rise to the occasion. As the night deepened on Zithra, Ethan looked toward the stars beyond the palace walls. The galaxy was vast, filled with civilizations, challenges, and opportunities, and he knew that humans, underestimated though they might be, could shine brightly through courage, wisdom, and the quiet strength of character that had carried him through the trial of the ancients.